Hey everybody, so we're going to take a few minutes and do a quick look at special education as it pertains to the key legal binding document for students in special education known as the IEP. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what IEP stands for, and an IEP stands for an Individualized Education Program. All IEPs must be in compliance with federal laws. That federal law is IDEA and any reauthorizations of that federal law, and then state laws that must be in compliance with federal laws. In order for students to qualify for an IEP, they have to meet the standards of eligibility in any of the 14 disability categories set up in IDEA. And know that for each of the 14 categories, there are very different standards that students must meet. So IEPs are always based upon a student being eligible for special education, and we must follow all parts of IDEA in order for a student to be eligible. That would include the non-biased evaluations, the multi-factored evaluations, looking at least restrictive environment, all of those components of IDEA. So we need to be sure that when we're looking at an IEP, that IEP is focused solely on a student's area of eligibility. So for example, if a student qualifies for an IEP and their eligibility category is a specific learning disability and reading fluency, then we can't have behavior goals, we can't have math goals. Our goals can only be focused on the area of eligibility, which for this student was reading fluency. Now, if you suspect a disability in other areas, then you still have to go through that same process we went through for the student to qualify for a specific learning disability and reading fluency, going through the RTI process and the eligibility process for that new area. Looking at the state of Kentucky, Kentucky has the eligibility requirement forms, and all of them are located on the KDE website. We're looking at it here, the special education forms, eligibility determination. So if I am looking at a student that had significant behaviors and we want to see if they qualify for an emotional or behavioral disability, then I need to open up that eligibility form and go through the components of that form to see if it's possible that that student is eligible. Now know that I, as an educator, don't get to just decide, oh, this student is eligible for an IEP, but rather I would have to go through the entire process with the committee, and that's all done, again, following federal law. So, I would be getting parent permission before we do any evaluation, walking through that entire process. All right, so we've looked at the state forms. Now know that an IEP has required components. The first component is known as the PLAF, or that present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. And this is where we get the baseline for where a student is currently performing, what their strengths and areas of needs are based on their disability category. We're also going to look at special factors, such as if a student is an English learner, if a student has speech or communication issues, if there's any other factor that might influence their disability. We're going to also craft goals for the student based on their area of eligibility. So looking at the data and the present levels in those areas of deficit, what kind of goals and benchmarks might we need to develop? What kind of specially designed instruction is required? This is what the teacher is doing to help the student reach the goal. This is teacher directed. And what methods of measurement are we going to use to see if the student is actually moving towards meeting those benchmarks and goals? So all of those are included within the goals. The other thing that we do when we're looking at goals is we make sure that what we're developing is in compliance with the research-based strategies. That's a requirement of federal law. And in Kentucky, we have this fantastic IEP and lesson plan development handbook that, as you'll see here, has in section 1 the specially designed instruction and supplementary aids and services that we need to use to make sure we're in compliance with federal law. This is available on the KDE website. Here under this tab for IEP Guidance and Documents, you'll notice that the IEP Guidance document is here, and the one we were just looking at, the IEP and Lesson Plan Development Handbook, all on the KDE website. So in addition to the present levels, the goals, the special factors, We're also required to have supplementary aids and services. These are also sometimes known as accommodations, and this is what the students need in order to access the content. We also are required to list all the services, including time and location of where services will be provided for that specially designed instruction. We also have to list all related services, such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech. If the student qualifies for extended school year services, if the student is over the age of 14 in Kentucky and 16 federally, and then we're also required to have transition plan, which includes information across all the categories of the IEP. As I've mentioned and we've kind of looked at briefly at the KDE website, there are two documents that are just absolutely crucial to developing IEPs that meet federal and state guidelines and serve the best interest of our students based on their area of eligibility and need. The first one is this guidance document. The guidance document should be used to develop an IEP and walks you step by step through every requirement from the information you put in the present levels all the way through to the end of the IEP. And you also need to use together the IEP and Lesson Plan Development Handbook, because that handbook has all those individual pieces, that specially designed instruction and supplementary aids and services that you'll need. So to begin your journey into looking at IEPs, you'll need to go to the KDE website, look at the eligibility pages, and look at the IEP Guidance Document and Lesson Plan Handbook, and that will give you the beginning baby steps we need to start developing and looking at IEPs.